Peter entered his sister-in-law's garden with anxiety gripping his chest. He had always been wary of family gatherings with his in-laws. With the exception of his sister-in-law Elizabeth, the entire family, including Victoria, his wife of 23 years, shared a boisterous sense of humor. Unfortunately, Peter often found himself the target of their jokes. He had warned Victoria more than once that one day she and her brothers would go too far, potentially destroying their marriage. Victoria always brushed off his concerns with a laugh. "They're just jokes, aren't they?" Victoria had left a day early to help with the preparations. Peter chose to cover the 30-mile journey on foot. He had two reasons for this. First, he enjoyed long walks, and by his standards, 30 miles was an average distance he could cover in about 8 hours. Second, arriving later than the others would save him a few extra hours of sitting on pins and needles. The problem was that when Victoria's relatives weren't together, they were mostly friendly and helpful. But when gathered as a group, they seemed to lose all restraint. Once, Peter had to shave his head because they thought it would be funny to glue a wig to his hair. He had also suffered a couple of bruised ribs from another prank, but they didn't seem to get the hint. Victoria was still furious with Peter for confronting her, and he had told her bluntly that if this happened again, she could look for another husband. To put it mildly, Peter's relationship with his in-laws was strained. At 45 years old, Peter Van Ryan didn't strike most people as particularly imposing. He had dark hair with hints of gray, a tan, a friendly face with greenish-brown eyes, a large nose, and full lips. He was so introverted that he could be called shy. He only opened up to those he trusted, revealing himself as caring, funny, and very intelligent, as well as an excellent teacher, especially for children. He helped with both self-defense training and schoolwork at a nearby community center. Peter was generally calm, but if pushed to his limit, which was extremely difficult to do, he would explode without warning. At 6 feet tall and weighing only 165 pounds, he was a wiry man in excellent physical condition, with muscles that flexed with every movement. There wasn't an ounce of excess fat on his body, but he didn't like to show it. Even in private company, he always wore long-sleeved shirts and baggy pants to hide his physique. He had long, rather slender but muscular legs. Beyond walking, he was skilled in Tai Chi and Wushu, training daily. Peter needed these exercises to keep his temper under control. Growing up in a disadvantaged area, his thin appearance had made him a victim of local hooligans more than once, until his patience ran out and he began to fight back. Very early in life, Peter realized that bulky muscles would not develop naturally on his slender frame. Then one day, he saw a professional ballet dancer on TV and realized he needed a completely different training program, prompting him to research how to achieve it. Despite his background, Peter rose through the ranks of a construction company where he still worked. The company built large structures such as dams, locks, and canals around the world. Peter started working at 18, immediately after the death of his parents and younger brother, who died when their car was washed away during a thunderstorm. It was at work that he first met Kevin Rhodes during the construction of a canal. The foreman noticed Peter, a smart, hard-working young man, and took him under his wing. Kevin didn't like this and suddenly saw Peter as a competitor. After Peter spotted an error in some dam drawings, the foreman sent a letter of recommendation to the site manager. After a conversation and testing of his abilities, Peter was offered a job as an apprentice planner. His career began to take off slowly at first, but he soon became a rising star. Today, he earned a salary in the upper six figures as a senior logistics planner with final responsibility for planning and executing major projects. This made Kevin, now his brother-in-law, deeply jealous. They both met their future wives at a party when Peter was 20. Elizabeth worked part-time as a receptionist in the office of the company where Peter and Kevin worked. She brought Victoria, who was 5 years older, with her as an escort. At the party, the girls attracted a lot of attention from men, but they didn't notice the young man sitting quietly at the bar, drinking water with a slice of lemon and watching the mating games unfold. The sisters were dancing with Kevin and another colleague when a commotion broke out. Someone had tried to put a substance in one of the girls' drinks, and Peter noticed it. The man tried to escape, causing such a ruckus that security came, much to Kevin's dismay. The sisters became more interested in talking to Peter than dancing with Kevin. Later that evening, Victoria noticed Peter had become a topic of discussion among the other girls. One of them had seen him at a company-sponsored gym and remarked on how differently he worked out and how visible the results were on his body. Victoria made up her mind and invited him to dance. Peter agreed, and Victoria was impressed by his gentle manner. They started dating, but to Victoria's frustration, Peter always said goodbye with a chaste kiss on the cheek. She wanted more, but Peter kept his distance. In desperation, she enlisted Elizabeth's help. The next day, Elizabeth, being much more courageous, met Peter at lunchtime and asked, "Peter, may I ask you a question?" "Of course, Elizabeth. What's wrong? Do you like my sister?" "Of course. How can you not like her? I really like her. Otherwise I wouldn't be dating her, would I?" "Then why don't you try to kiss her?" "Why would she want me to kiss her? Many men are chasing her. Why should she be interested in me?" "Because she has a soft spot for you, stupid." Elizabeth shook her head in despair and left to call her sister and tell her about their brief conversation. After this, Victoria decided to take matters into her own hands, and as a result, they got married a year later. It took Elizabeth and Kevin several years to become a couple. Their relationship was tumultuous in the early years, and it wasn't until Elizabeth told Kevin that he had to choose between being a bachelor and never seeing her again or growing up and becoming a responsible adult that he gave in, and they also got married. When Kevin learned of Victoria and her brother's love for practical jokes, he got the idea to start undermining Peter's position in the family, and the pranks began. At first, they were innocent, but gradually they became worse and more humiliating. Peter mostly endured it in silence. He warned Victoria that one day they would cross even his limits, and after that, there would be no turning back. But as is usually the case with bullying, the perpetrators saw nothing wrong with their actions. Peter's only outlet was his conversations with Elizabeth and the diary he had kept since the death of his parents. Peter and Victoria had been blessed with 3 children. Their daughter was 22 years old, and their 2 sons were 20 and 18. All 3 were successfully following their own paths in life. Miranda, their daughter, was very close to Peter, while the sons were more attached to their mother. Peter was already on edge when he entered the garden. He looked around and noticed the body language of the family members. "Damn, they're up to something again," he thought. As he wandered through the garden, he noticed how they stole glances at him and exchanged knowing looks with each other. He just sat and waited, but nothing happened. Finally, Peter decided to go upstairs and take a shower. He entered the house and went up the stairs when he heard something that he couldn't believe. A deep, sickening pit formed in his stomach. "Please God, let it be a joke this time too," he thought. He took out his phone and turned on video mode, carefully bringing the phone to the door. He saw Kevin being intimate with Victoria. Peter filmed a few minutes of this performance, then quietly retreated down the stairs. He sat down heavily in the chair where he had left his backpack. He noticed the smirks of the rest of the family, and his anger began to rise. He sat there, just staring straight ahead, getting angrier and angrier. Finally, Kevin left the room with words that humiliated Peter. Something broke in him, and suddenly all the frustration that had accumulated over the years took over. There was a fight in which everyone got involved. A grinning Gloria entered the garden and asked, "Did he fall for it?" Suddenly she noticed what had happened. Her hands flew to her face, and she stammered, "Oh God! What happened?" Her sister furiously replied, "Yes, he fell for it to the fullest, and now you will have to bear the consequences. You better start calling the doctor or an ambulance. I warned you that he would not tolerate this abuse forever. This time you have greatly overstepped the mark. Where is he now? I need to calm him down. Oh damn, what have we done?" Gloria exclaimed. He left. He took down 3 people without even breaking a sweat and just walked away. He just took his backpack and left. "I'll go after him and bring him back." "Oh no, you won't. You are going to deal with this mess that you, your brothers, and my stupid husband have created. Your marriage is already ruined." "What do you mean ruined?" "It was a joke," Victoria screamed. "Tell that to Peter, you stupid cow. I'm sure he thinks differently. I can hardly believe it was a prank. I told you that what you had in mind was going too far. I don't think he'll listen to anything coming out of your mouth right now." Elizabeth took a deep breath and continued ruthlessly. "Even if you convince him that it was a humiliating prank, he will still file for divorce. I know he warned you more than once. Even your kind, shy husband can be pushed to his breaking point. Well, you did it, and now he's responded. Now, while we're talking, how are you and Kevin going to convince me that this was a prank and you didn't actually cheat? You and Kevin have a lot of explaining to do. I foresee 2 divorces in the near future. I'm not sure I want to stay married to someone who is capable of cheating or such cruel jokes." Victoria collapsed on the bench as the gravity of the situation began to dawn on her. Her sister's words penetrated her mind and soul. "Nothing happened. But how can you prove that nothing happened? And now you're talking about divorcing your husband because of our prank? Looks like we really screwed up, don't we?" That, my dear sister, is the biggest understatement of the year. Now, let's join our 2 suffering brothers and start helping them. The ambulance and police are already trying to talk to Kevin. Kevin muttered, "I'll sue that stupid." Elizabeth immediately responded, "Oh no, you won't. It's your own fault, idiot." Kevin looked up, and she asked, "Do you want to stay married to me?" "Yes, certainly." "Stupid question," Kevin muttered in confusion. Elizabeth answered sternly, "Then you will not press charges. It was your own stupid prank that backfired on you. Because of your cruelty, I am now considering divorcing you. If you sue Peter, this divorce will become a reality. Do you understand?" Kevin was stunned. "What do you mean?" "Kevin, as far as I can tell, you slept with my sister. Whether it was a prank or not, the cruelty towards Peter is indescribable. So if you are going to file a complaint against him, I will definitely divorce you and ruin you. If you don't, there may be a small chance that I won't file for divorce. Do you understand this?" When Kevin mumbled a yes, Elizabeth turned to her brothers. "You all knew what was going to happen today, and you enjoyed the torment you've caused this man over the years. Now it's broken you. You really underestimated him, didn't you?" She turned to her brothers' wives. "Take this pathetic bunch of losers and don't stand on ceremony with them while you give them a beating. I'm afraid this party is over." With that, she helped Kevin into the ambulance and told him he could take a taxi when he was finished at the hospital. Victoria was still sitting dazed on the bench, her little sister next to her. She asked herself out loud, "What have I done? I have to make amends to him. I need to talk to him and tell him I love him." Elizabeth snorted. "Do you love him? You have a funny way of showing it. I warned you, our daughters-in-law warned you, hell, even Mom and Dad warned you. But no, you, your brothers, and my stupid husband had to continue to humiliate Peter with your sick jokes. They even sent him to the hospital, and in all this time he only responded once. This one time should have been a warning to you. This time you have really outdone yourself. It is simply impossible to fall further. Can I ask you, have you even taken a good look at your husband lately? He's a very smart and kind man, but under all those baggy t-shirts, he has a very toned body. He is brilliant like no other and as strong as a bull. He can fight back, but he always knew what would happen if he started fighting. He was afraid that what just happened would happen. How the hell do you expect to save your marriage after all this? Should I tell him that nothing happened and it was just a joke? He won't believe you. Can't you understand this with your stupid brain? I don't believe you, and even if you convince him that it was a sick prank, do you think everything will be fine and dandy? You're probably even more mistaken than I thought. I'm pretty sure you're on the road to divorce. How much did you drink? Can you drive? Victoria nodded, and Elizabeth continued. Then I advise you to go home. If you're lucky, you might catch him there before he disappears. Late in the evening, already at night, Victoria was sitting at the dining table when Peter staggered into the house. She jumped up and shouted, "Thank God you're home." Peter muttered, "For now, I will disappear as soon as possible." No, no, no. I don't want you to leave. It was a joke, a practical joke. Nothing happened. Victoria collapsed on the sofa again, sobbing. Why should I believe you? I saw you and that idiot being intimate. I even recorded it. Don't try to tell me nothing happened when I saw it with my own eyes. Nothing happened. Please believe me. Here, look. Peter handed her his phone with the video. Victoria watched the video and suddenly realized that this recording could destroy her marriage. I didn't have an intimate relationship. It was a joke. Why don't you believe me? I was wearing tight pants under my skirt. Who cares? The result will be the same. What do you mean? What is the result? I'll still file for divorce, regardless of whether you cheated on me, played a prank on me, or both. I'm finished. I'm tired of you and your family. The amount of abuse I have endured from you and your so-called jokes is incredible. I warned you more than once that one day this would destroy our marriage. Guess what? That moment has arrived. Now, as soon as I find somewhere to live, I will disappear from your life. Peter went upstairs and headed to the bathroom. Victoria rushed after him in despair. She sobbed, "Don't go. I will do whatever you want." Peter didn't react at all. He took a shower and returned to the bedroom to grab something for the night. Victoria looked at Peter with new eyes. Her sister's words about him being in great shape echoed in her head. She compared Peter to her brothers and brother-in-law. The other 5 had developed bellies over the years, while she couldn't see an ounce of fat on Peter. His muscles weren't as bulky as the men she'd seen at the gym. Peter had more of an athlete's build. Oh my God! How could I not notice this? How could I forget this? I really took him for granted and treated him as a target for ridicule. How can I keep this man now? As soon as rumors of divorce spread, women will start hunting for him. She decided to give Peter some space, hoping that his anger would subside overnight. She also made a mental note to call Elizabeth about the recording as Peter returned to the bedroom to get the last few things before going into the spare bedroom. She asked, "Can I have this video, please?" Peter, surprised and annoyed, replied, "Whatever. I can't imagine why you need it, but have it your way." He sent the recording to Victoria. Victoria couldn't resist and tried again. "This is your bed too. You can sleep in it. We're married. And I really want to show you that I love you." "No, don't think so. I had 8 hours to think about what happened today. You better get used to sleeping in this bed alone until you find another fool for your nasty jokes." Victoria was stunned by the fury with which Peter delivered his answer and began to cry again. Peter just went to bed without saying another word. The next morning, Peter was not there when Victoria woke up after a very restless night. She wanted to find him so she could talk to him before he left for work. Sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, she watched the video again. She carefully studied the reason for the collapse of her marriage, and suddenly it dawned on her that perhaps her brother-in-law had a completely different goal. It really looked like he was enjoying himself. She began to remember that day. Kevin was the one who suggested this prank. At first, she didn't like it and refused, but Kevin and her brothers continued to insist, saying that Peter was already used to pranks and that he could only imagine the look on his face when they told him he had been fooled again. The wives, including her sister, strongly objected and wanted nothing to do with it. When Kevin started implying that she was a coward and had no backbone, she relented. Now everything fell into place. Kevin wanted to take advantage of her because he was jealous of Peter. He even suggested that they take off their clothes to make it look more believable, but she categorically refused. They simply could not imagine that Peter would be so resourceful as to record everything on video. Victoria took her phone and dialed her sister's number. "Elizabeth," she said when her sister answered. "What do you need?" Victoria began to explain confusingly. "Elizabeth, now I understand that I am the stupidest woman in the Northern Hemisphere, and perhaps in the other too. Now I understand that no words or actions can make up for what I did to my husband. He recorded everything on video. This recording will probably cost me my marriage. I will do everything possible to persuade Peter to reconcile. I'm also absolutely sure you'll want to see this. Can I come to you and show it? Or will you come to me?" "If you can," Elizabeth replied. "Peter isn't here right now, by the way. He slept in a spare bedroom and left before I got up. I'm pretty sure he's still furious. I'll warn everyone else to avoid him because I'm not sure he's under control. For what it's worth, I'm really sorry." Elizabeth responded dryly, "The apology is late. You should have thought about this earlier. I'll be with you in an hour. I hope it will be something important." Meanwhile, Peter was preparing for war. First, he went to his employer and explained that he needed to take a few days off for personal reasons. His manager realized that something was seriously wrong. She had never seen Peter so agitated. Most people described him as cool-headed and cucumber-like, especially in stressful situations. Samantha told him to stay put and left the office. A few minutes later, she returned with the HR manager and said, "Peter, I see that something is very wrong. I also see that you need to relax before you do something you'll regret. You can start by telling us what happened. By the way, do you know Becky? She is our HR manager and also a licensed consultant. I can leave if you want, but rest assured that everything you say will remain within these walls." There was silence in the office for several minutes. Peter sighed heavily and began to talk while tears rolled down his face, pouring out his soul. When he finished, Becky said, "I can understand that you lost your composure. Anyone could. I'm surprised this happened so late. Can you explain why?" Peter thought for a moment and replied, "I think for 2 reasons. I loved my wife and I practiced Tai Chi. The first thing they teach is self-control, self-control, and self-control." Samantha chimed in, "You just said, 'I loved my wife.' Does this mean you don't love her anymore?" I really don't know. Images of what she did still burn in my mind. I feel empty inside." Becky asked, "What are you going to do now? Do you want to get a divorce? Do you think your in-laws will go to the police and file a complaint against you for fighting?" "Yes, I'm going to divorce Victoria. I've had enough. I warned her more than once, and she just couldn't stop humiliating me. Now I will give it to her in full, and I don't care if they go to the police. The only thing that worries me is that I can't trust myself anymore. I'm afraid that if I see any of these scoundrels, I'll lose control again." Becky looked at Peter thoughtfully and said, "I can arrange temporary housing for you. It's not luxurious, but you'll have a place to live." This will take several days. Can you wait? I will contact your wife and advise her to keep her family away from you. Maybe I'll find a motel or something like that if I feel like I'm losing control. After some time, Samantha returned. She listened to Becky's brief version of the conversation and after a minute said, I can recommend a good family lawyer, the one who handled my divorce. He's very good. The company will provide a lawyer if your wife's relatives file a police report. Also, consider yourself on vacation until Becky gives the green light. From now on, she's your consultant. Understood. Peter was somewhat taken aback. I got it. I just don't understand why you're helping me like this. Peter, Samantha replied, you have no idea how people in this company regard you. Let me tell you that you are very respected and appreciated. Everyone who works with you respects you for your professionalism. Your rule of being strict on content but attentive to relationships is something that I personally try to follow. You are my role model. Now go have some coffee first, and then go home and pack your things. Meanwhile, Victoria and Elizabeth were drinking coffee in the kitchen. Elizabeth was angry, cursing after watching the recording. This idiot, this cheating scoundrel, and a few other colorful expressions that Victoria didn't even know. Quietly, Victoria said to her sister, I'm so sorry. You were right. I shouldn't have done this. Now 2 marriages are destroyed. Elizabeth's head rose sharply. Don't you understand? If that idiot Kevin can do this to you, what else can he do? He was ready to cheat on me with you. This convinces me that you were deceived by the stupid man and didn't actually cheat, but this idiot cheated on me big time, at least spiritually, if not physically. So I'm going to divorce him the same way Peter is going to divorce you. And I'm warning you, I'll be first in line when Peter becomes single again. Victoria turned pale and firmly answered her sister. He's not divorced yet. You better stay away, dear sister. Oh, I'm not a traitor, and neither is Peter. I'll wait until he's free. Victoria was stunned by her sister's words. She stammered, Are you going to take my man away? Will my own sister really pursue my husband? Tears flowed down her cheeks again. The bell rang. Victoria looked at her phone. The number was unfamiliar to her. Hoping it was Peter, she answered and put it on speaker so Elizabeth could listen. Victoria Van Ryan is speaking. This is Samantha Brevis from Global Constructions, the corporate consultant. I just spoke with your husband. 1 minute, please. Victoria left the kitchen, and when she returned, her eyes were full of tears. It was his boss. Peter was advised to avoid emotionally stressful situations. She also asked me to keep my family away from him. What is he doing to me? Victoria exclaimed. Don't try to play the victim in front of me. It's all your fault and no one else's. Peter was the victim. You started with innocent jokes and harmless pranks, but these pranks gradually became more and more cruel. You didn't pay attention to the warnings you received from Peter, from me, from our daughters-in-law, and from Mom and Dad too. Now you have crossed the point of no return, and suddenly you ask what he is doing to you? Did you even love this person? Or was he just a punching bag for you? An easy prey? It was all just jokes. And one more question. Have you ever seen Peter participate in Tai Chi competitions or play sports? Do you even understand what he does at work? Victoria was completely unsettled. She stuttered. What are you talking about? What about his work? He's kind of like an administrator. What's special about this? And fights? Peter? Don't make me laugh. He wouldn't hurt a fly. All this Tai Chi is something soft, like marshmallows. Suddenly she froze. She looked dumbfounded, slowly her face paling as she said, Damn it! Yesterday he clearly demonstrated the opposite. 3 men were down and he just walked away. With all these events, I completely forgot about what happened. That's where he got those muscles from. Training. And no, I don't know exactly what Peter does for work. I'm sure you'll tell me about it, right? If you spent time talking to your husband instead of coming up with new ways to humiliate him and spend his money, you would know that he teaches self-defense to women, teaches children Tai Chi, and helps them with their studies. What about his work? Have you heard of the Suez Canal or Dubai? The company dredging these sites is Peter's employer, and he was the one in charge of planning more than one of these giant construction projects. But no, you were only interested in how quickly you could spend his money. When was the last time you hugged him and told him you loved him? Do you have any respect for this poor man at all? You just took him for granted. So tell me, how many lovers have you managed to change during this time? I know Peter hasn't been intimate with you for a long time. Victoria's face turned red with anger. She said sharply, I never cheated on Peter. Never. I love him. Elizabeth responded, Then why, in the name of God, do you treat him like crap? I know all this because Peter and I communicated a lot, and we have almost no secrets from each other. They heard the sound of a car and looked out the window. Peter got out of the car and headed toward the front door. Victoria was in a daze, and before she came to her senses, Peter had already gone upstairs and entered their bedroom. Victoria followed him, with Elizabeth timidly trailing behind. She asked, Peter, didn't you go to work? What are you doing here? Peter, with a voice devoid of any emotion, replied, I'm on vacation. Within a few days, I will have temporary housing, so I'll start packing my things. Victoria muttered, Are you actually going to leave me because of a joke? It can't be just because of one joke. It's because of all the jokes you and your family have pulled, not to mention the cheating. This is already more than enough. Now please, leave me alone. But I love you, and you love me. You don't love me. You love to mock me, to humiliate me. You love to spend the money I earn, but you don't love me. As for me, I don't feel anything for you anymore. Nothing. Everything disappeared from me when I saw your latest joke, as you call it. It was painful to see, and I won't let that happen again. I'll be staying at a motel until I find another place. You will hear from my lawyer as soon as I leave. With those words, he turned his back on the women and continued to pack his things. Both women were stunned by his determination. They left him alone, returning to the kitchen. Victoria took a deep breath, shuddered, and said to Elizabeth, You know, he's right. I treated Peter terribly. I denied him intimacy because I wanted him to beg me, but that never happened. He never begged. Now I see that I acted cruelly. I want to fight for my marriage. I realize that I love him, but how can I prove it after everything that has happened? Elizabeth sighed. I can't help you, and deep down, I don't want to help you. I've had a crush on Peter since the day he defended our brother. I respected your marriage more than you did yourself. I'll keep my distance until it's all over, and the day the ink dries on your divorce papers. Mind you, I will continue to see Peter as we always have, but I will not make any proposals to him. Elizabeth left, leaving Victoria alone with her problems. Kevin was in the hospital, and she needed to bring him clothes and essentials. She decided to make the visit as short as possible. Kevin had finally shown his true colors, and she didn't like it at all. She was determined not to give him a chance to talk her out of the divorce. A few hours later, Victoria knocked on the spare bedroom door and called quietly, Dinner's ready. Bon appetit. Would you like to have dinner? Not from your hands. I won't poison you, you know. No, I'm not sure you won't. Remember when you gave me medicine? I was sick for 2 days. Another one of your jokes. No, I won't take any more risks. I'll eat somewhere on the street. Victoria ran to the kitchen, crying again. The next day, Victoria hardly slept and felt exhausted. She tried to come up with a scenario to get Peter back, but in the end, She couldn't even talk to him. He avoided her like the plague. Peter spoke with the lawyer Samantha recommended. The lawyer tried to reason with Peter, but all he wanted was to get away from it all. The conversation was long. Eventually, Peter gave the lawyer power of attorney, instructing him to file for divorce as soon as he found a new place to live and moved out. He didn't want emotional scenes. 2 days later, Peter toured an apartment. It was small but cheap and conveniently located next to his office. It had 1 bedroom, a living room, a bathroom with a shower, a separate toilet, a small kitchen, and a balcony on the top floor. He made a list of what he needed and what he would like to have to make his life more comfortable. He was thinking about buying a bicycle to commute to work. Peter then went to the office to sign the lease. The keys were supposed to be handed over to him in a week. When he arrived at the office, he saw Elizabeth at the reception desk and tried to pass her unnoticed, but she called out to him. Reluctantly, he walked up to the counter. Elizabeth looked around to make sure they were alone, then said to him, "Peter, please don't ignore me. I had nothing to do with how you were treated. I always advised against doing this. I'm going to divorce Kevin. I can't live with a person who is capable of doing things like they did to you. I won't try to make peace between you and Victoria, but you need to know that she didn't sleep with Kevin. I don't know, Elizabeth. Is it true? They're just trying to spin it so they can blame it on me. This recording tells me otherwise. No matter what they try to convince me, I'm still going to divorce her. I'm already tired of all this. I was so tired of everything that I gave my lawyer power of attorney. I just want to get away from all of this. I have found a place to live, so I will soon disappear from your life." Elizabeth was shocked to hear the finality in his words. "Peter, please, let's at least remain friends. I promise I won't get involved in your divorce, but I would really like to continue communicating with you. I have always loved you very much." Peter thought for a moment and, with a sad smile and pain in his voice, answered, "Of course we can remain friends. Let's have dinner together tonight and talk." Elizabeth felt relieved. At least Peter didn't cut her out of his life. She immediately agreed. Peter went to sign the lease. Dinner that night started out a little awkwardly, but they both soon relaxed. Peter asked Elizabeth, "Are you really going to divorce Kevin?" "Yes. Our marriage has not been meaningful for the past 2 years. I suspect that he has already cheated on me, but I have no proof. The last straw finally convinced me that this decision was correct. It was too cruel. Do you already have a lawyer? If not, you can contact mine. I'll think about it. Tell me, what are you going to do next? Do you have a place to stay when you move? As soon as I'm sure Victoria won't be around. I don't want emotional scenes, and frankly, I don't want to see her anymore. As far as I am concerned, you are the only family I have left." Elizabeth asked if Peter remembered when the bullying actually started. Peter thought for a moment and replied, "I think I remember. Do you remember that trip organized by the company? This was about 9 years ago." Elizabeth nodded. She was there too, having just married Kevin. Peter continued, "Victoria stayed at home. She needed to work. Our parents looked after the children. If you remember, we were divided into groups for this hike. The people with no experience went first so that the more experienced men and women could help them through the last and most difficult section when they caught up. You went with the first group. Kevin and a few other people were in the second group, and I went with the last group because I hiked regularly with our kids. I was prepared. I brought a first aid kit, a Garmin handheld GPS, a map, a backpack with nutrition bars, and a gallon water tank. When I arrived, I put my backpack down to study the mission and entered the destination coordinates into my Garmin. When I came out again, I put the backpack on my shoulders. It felt different and much heavier, so I checked it. It turned out that it contained 2 bottles of whiskey and food that I had never seen before. I took these things out and handed them to the coordinator. After that, I set off because Kevin and his comrades were long gone. The 15-mile route started uphill, and I soon caught up with them. Kevin was sweating profusely and cursing. As I walked by, he was already drunk. Halfway, there was a rest point where you could take a break. I checked in and continued on my way. I caught up with your group at the 10-mile checkpoint and gave your companion some water, then walked with you to the finish line. When Kevin finally reached the finish line, cursing and sweating, he demanded his whiskey. To his surprise, the coordinator handed him a plastic bag containing his food container but no whiskey, along with an official warning since drinking alcohol during the trek was prohibited. Kevin yelled at me that he would get revenge. Soon after that, the real bullying and pranks started. Did you tell Victoria about this? Certainly. She just said it was just a joke. When their last joke ended with me getting injured, I warned her that another such joke would put an end to our marriage. And here we are. I am going to keep my promise, and I will do it with pleasure. It was quiet at the table for some time. Finally, Elizabeth said quietly, I don't envy you. I never allowed myself to be pulled into this abuse by Kevin. He hit me for this sometimes. Now I understand why. I admire your patience and kindness, and Victoria is a complete fool to lose you so stupidly. Elizabeth blushed as she continued. When I first met you, I couldn't understand what Victoria saw in you. Over time, watching you in the family, I realized that I wanted to replace her. I know it's too early for both of us, but when this is all over, I'd really like us to try. Peter was stunned. He stammered. I don't know what to say. This completely surprises me. How long have you been feeling this way? After that previous joke when you got hurt? Don't worry, I already told Victoria about it, Elizabeth replied. Could you take this a little slower? Actually, we're not even divorced yet. I'm not even sure if I want to be in another relationship at this point. Besides, after all this is over, it's entirely possible that you won't even like me anymore. Elizabeth felt a little disappointed for a moment but understood. She replied softly, Of course I understand. Forgive me. My desires have taken over. Peter smiled softly. You are forgiven. Let's see where fate takes us. But at the moment, I am disgusted, hateful, and extremely angry. I want nothing more to do with that sadistic witch, nor with your brothers. He lightened the mood by adding, Now a more prosaic question. What do you want for dessert? And don't tell me it's me. He said this with a smile to show that he was not upset or angry with Elizabeth. The tension in the house was palpable. A week after what Victoria called the incident, Peter ignored her. He only answered questions about everyday matters, and when Victoria tried to talk about their relationship, Peter simply walked away. This morning, like every day for the past week, Peter was gone before Victoria woke up. When Victoria entered the kitchen, she took a deep breath and thought to herself, This can't go on forever. We need to talk sometime. Perhaps I can corner him tonight. As always since they got married, Peter had already prepared the coffee when Victoria came down. Even now, it was no different from how it had been before. She enjoyed a strong drink and was ready to go when her daughter entered the house. Victoria pulled herself together because Miranda could read her like an open book and spot a lie a mile away. Miranda looked at her mother and said, What's the matter? You look like you've been through everything. Your father and I had a fight. A very bad one. Miranda could guess what it was about but decided to let her mother tell her story. How come? We joked, and your father took it badly. Very badly. Now he's been ignoring me all week. He doesn't talk to me, refuses to have dinner with me, and even sleeps in the spare room. So Dad is really mad at you. This must be a damn serious joke. Victoria took a deep breath. We were having a family party at Elizabeth and Kevin's house. Like he does sometimes, Peter went upstairs. When he arrived, Henry gave us a signal. We set up a scene as if Kevin and I were having an intimate moment, but your father filmed the whole thing before he went downstairs again. He sat there until Uncle Kevin came down. I don't know exactly what happened, but when I came down, there was a fight. Your father left right after that. I assume my aunt has already given you her opinion? Yes, that she was angry is an understatement. What do you want to do now? What about Dad? Doesn't he talk to you at all? Victoria began to sob. No. The only thing he said was that as soon as he had a place to live, he would leave me. Miranda looked at her mother, shock showing on her face. She almost whispered, Mom, I'm pretty sure you missed half the story. It would have been much worse otherwise. Dad wouldn't have reacted so sharply. Give it up. I've tried. Victoria replied, resigned. Miranda was stunned. She said, I am refraining from making any comments because if I comment, I will definitely say something I will regret later. I'll leave you to try to make sense of this mess by yourself, Mom. With that, Miranda walked out the door without looking back at the sobbing woman. Late in the evening, Victoria returned home from work. She opened the front door, determined to corner Peter and spill her heart out. She knew she had to grovel and beg, but she was sure he would relent eventually. She went straight upstairs to change. After a shower and applying perfume in strategic places, she looked satisfied in the mirror. Dressed to the nines, she saw a woman of average height with beautiful breasts and muscular legs that looked longer thanks to the stilettos she wore. After this inspection, she went to the kitchen to prepare Peter's favorite snack. In the kitchen, she saw Peter's keychain and started to panic. She ran to the spare room, which was empty. It was as if Peter had never been there. Now the real panic began. She went downstairs again, fell onto the sofa, and sat there for an indefinite time. Someone knocked, and Victoria rose from the sofa to open the door. Who is it? Special delivery for Mrs. Van Ryan. Just put it forward. I'll pick it up later. I can't, ma'am. I need a signature. Victoria opened the door and saw an elegantly dressed young man with a beautifully wrapped box. She asked, Do you know who this is from? While she signed the receipt, the man answered, It's written here, from your husband. Have a nice evening, ma'am. And the man left. Victoria's heart began to beat faster. Has Peter come to his senses? Did he finally accept my apology? She opened the box. Contained 2 sealed envelopes. She broke the seal on the first one, and something fell onto the tile with a clang. She looked around to see what it was. Then she saw it. It was Peter's wedding ring. She opened the second envelope, and divorce papers came out. The world disappeared from under her feet. She had never felt so empty. There was a short note, and she started reading it. It contained one line, Maybe now you understand. It also contained a restraining order for her and copies of documents for her brothers, as well as one for her brother-in-law. The second envelope contained copies of the diary that Peter kept, but Victoria's mind was already blank. She had never realized that a joke could cut someone's soul so deeply that it was already dark when her phone brought her out of her daze. Victoria, is this a joke? What the hell is with the restraining order? Her older brother almost shouted into the phone. Peter is so angry at us. Much more than you can imagine. He was so mad that he sent me the divorce papers as a gift. Divorce documents as a gift? What is this sick joke? Has he gone crazy? Well, that's what we've been doing to him for the last 10 years. The note said, and I quote, Maybe now you'll understand. What's wrong with him? Why did he write this? Because of the last prank we pulled. Now I can't convince him it wasn't real. He said he didn't care if Kevin actually slept with me or not. He said he was already over it. That's enough of a joke. He doesn't talk to me anymore, and I discover that his things were gone just before I received my gift. What is the reason for the divorce? I'll take a look now. Victoria checked the documents. She gasped and could barely read out loud what was written there. Prolonged mental cruelty, physical abuse, and adultery. She stammered, "Henry, He was stunned. Then he growled, "I'll talk to him. No one dares treat my sister like that if he can't take a joke. Remember the restraining order. That little prank he just pulled on me hurts like hell, and we've done much worse to him. I'll think about it." A few weeks later, Peter was completing planning and cost analysis for what he hoped would be his company's next big project. It was already very late when he decided that the project was completed. He pressed the send button. For the first time in weeks, he felt good. His all-consuming, omnidirectional anger began to subside. Because it was late, the building and parking lot were closed. Peter had to call security to be let out, but first he purchased a coffee card. The company provided free coffee, but there was an espresso machine for the barista that operated on a debit card. The security guards had to leave the warm office to escort Peter out and open the gate for his car. This was not done remotely. Security must always visually verify the identity of those leaving the building, in addition to the cameras. Peter was waiting for the guard, contemplating his current life, when there was a knock on the door. He took the coffee card and his laptop and opened the door. To his surprise, the officer was a beautiful woman, almost as tall as he was, with very light green-brown eyes, short brown hair, and an hourglass figure that even her uniform couldn't hide. She smiled and said, "Good evening, sir. Hey, I know you. You're helping my son with his homework at the community center. Thanks for that. He's doing much better now. Are you ready to leave?" Peter replied, "Yes. Before I forget, this is for you and your colleague for the inconvenience I caused these last few days. Now, let's go." "Thank you, sir, but this is our job, not an inconvenience. Can I ask your name?" "Call me Peter." "Off duty, sir. My name is Meredith Green." "Well, Meredith, I'd love to invite you to dinner, but I don't think Mr. Green would approve. Besides, I'm not a very nice person right now." Meredith smiled sadly. "Mr. Green is gone. My son's father ran away before he was born." She opened the door for him and watched as he walked to his car. When Peter opened the car door, shadows began to move, and two people attacked him. Meredith immediately pressed the panic button. The lights in the building's lobby and parking lot turned on, but the assailants unsuccessfully tried to climb over the fence and ran to hide. The police arrived a few minutes later and, along with Meredith's colleague, began searching the area. An hour later, the two men were found and arrested. Peter said goodbye to Meredith. He almost gazed into her eyes, and when she said she was single, he hoped to meet her again at the community center. Still thinking about Meredith, he opened his car door. Before his consciousness completely subsided, he heard someone hiss, "Can't take a joke? Can you, weakling?" When Peter opened his eyes again, he heard a woman's voice. "Lie still, Peter. The ambulance will arrive soon." "What's happened?" he muttered. "You were attacked. They ran away when I pulled the alarm, but they couldn't leave the area." "The police are looking for them," Meredith replied. Peter's brain started working again. He began to laugh quietly and said, "They got me good, cowards. I bet 10-1 that these are the brothers of my almost ex-wife." The ambulance arrived, and the medic examined him before he was taken to the hospital. When Peter came to his senses again, he looked around and slowly realized that he was in a hospital room. He felt as if he had been hit by an avalanche. He felt nauseous, and his head was throbbing. He looked around. Meredith was still there, and his children were too, looking worried. "What's happened?" he asked. Miranda replied, "Mom and Elizabeth are waiting outside. They want to see you." "Sorry, kids, but I don't want to see your mother. Not now, not ever. Besides, there's a restraining order in effect. Miranda, please tell them to leave. Tell my sister-in-law that I'll call her when I can." The doctor entered the room, and the others left for a minute. With the door open, Peter heard the two sisters arguing loudly. He heard Victoria chiding Elizabeth. "Didn't it occur to you to warn him or the company? One simple phone call and now he's back in the hospital. Once again, it's our fault. If he ever finds out that our brothers did this, the world will be too small." The door closed quietly behind Meredith, but Peter had heard enough. He sighed quietly. The doctor said, "As a result of all this, you need to stay here for at least a few days for observation. Do you agree? Do I have a choice?" "Of course you do. I'm staying. If we're done, could you ask the guard waiting outside to come in?" "Of course. I'll check on you again later, but please don't strain yourself. No walking." The doctor left, and Meredith re-entered the room. "How are you feeling?" she asked, concern in her voice. "It's my fault. I should have reacted faster." "Meredith, the only people to blame are those two idiots and my sister-in-law, who I just heard confessing to my wife that she didn't warn me. What kind of family do I have?" Peter said bitterly. He continued, "Can I ask you a favor?" Meredith nodded and said, "If I can help, then yes, within my capabilities. I just overheard a conversation between my wife and her sister, so my brothers-in-law planned this. Can you report this to the police? I don't want my kids involved. They don't need to be involved. Except for my sister-in-law, there is a court order in effect. Remind my wife of this, please." "Of course. Anything else? When can we have dinner?" "Already getting cocky, huh? As soon as you get better." The next morning, Peter sat up in bed. The nurse looked into the room and asked if a visitor could come in to see him. Peter was expecting someone from work, so he answered to let the person in. To his surprise, Elizabeth came into the room, sat down next to the bed, and simply asked, "How are you, Peter?" Peter looked at her and answered with irritation, "I'm lying in a hospital room. What do you think?" There was an awkward pause, during which Peter decided to address the elephant in the room. He spoke, "But this could have been avoided, right? All this could have been avoided." "What do you mean?" "Don't pretend to be innocent, Elizabeth. I overheard part of your little conversation with Victoria yesterday. Enough to know that you knew they were going to attack me. All those sweet words about how you're in love with me. Yes, but in the end, as always, family comes first." Elizabeth's face first turned red, then white as a sheet. She opened her mouth but didn't say a word. Peter was relentless and continued, "You were the only one I trusted after everything that happened. Can you explain why you decided to betray that trust? Why did you decide not to warn me? And one more thing, by not warning me, you became an accomplice. Do you realize this?" Elizabeth looked like a fish out of water. Her mouth opened and closed, but still nothing came out. Peter said, "You better leave. I don't want anything to do with you anymore, just like the rest of your family. Now tell me one last thing. Do I need to apply for a restraining order against you too?" Elizabeth ran out of the room. A few weeks later, Peter had a wonderful time with Meredith during their dinner. They really enjoyed each other's company. After that evening, they continued to date, and their relationship slowly developed. When Peter came to visit Meredith, he always had a little companion to bring along. Peter found out that Meredith had a crush on someone from her former employer and thought it was mutual. They even talked about marriage and children, but by chance, she discovered that he was communicating with two other women on the same topics. Unbeknownst to her, this man was courting her half-sister, Addison. Curious about who her sister was dating, Meredith peeked through the curtains and found her kissing the one she thought was her future husband. Slowly she came out, walked up to the couple, and tapped the guy on the shoulder. He turned, frowning to see who had interrupted the romantic encounter, and saw an angry Meredith. He only had enough time to mutter, "Meredith, what are you doing here?" before she hit him. Addison looked at her and screamed, "Why did you do that?" Meredith began to sob and answered breathlessly, "I just found out I'm pregnant by him." Addison looked at her stepsister in disbelief. "I don't believe you." Meredith showed her sister some photos on her phone from their little trip 10 weeks ago and said, "Look." The guy got into his car and drove away. The next day, the girls discovered that he had disappeared as if he had fallen through the ground. Peter and Meredith quickly became friends. They enjoyed spending time together, and most people thought they were a couple. Over time, they grew closer and became friends with benefits, but they realized that the stars were not aligned for them to fully devote themselves to each other. They were too different in some ways and too similar in others to be a complete couple. This continued until a few months later when Peter was called by the CEO and owner of Global Constructions. When Peter entered the main office, he was greeted by the director himself and escorted to his office. Without any preamble, he asked, "Remember that project in Central Asia? That freshwater reservoir?" Peter nodded and replied, "Of course. One of the conditions was the use of local labor, and including this in financial and planning calculations was almost impossible." He then waited patiently until the boss was ready to tell the rest. A few minutes passed, and the boss said, "This should remain between the two of us. There's a serious problem brewing. People are leaving, although we are paying twice as much as they are used to receiving. The project is almost at a standstill, and costs are growing exponentially. I need someone who can get this project going again. The future and reputation of Global Constructions depend on it." Peter nodded but waited for him to continue. The CEO continued, "You're not making it easy for me, are you? Anyway, here's the deal. I want you to go there. You will have full authority and control. You will receive hazard pay while you're there, 150% extra pay on top of what you already get, and a bonus if you make it. In a year, I'll arrange housing outside the office with a housekeeper. Last but not least, I'm too old for all this crap. You're my best man. You can handle this. You are competent enough to run this company, and I will appoint you as my successor." Peter was completely taken aback by this proposal. He had no idea that he was being considered for a promotion to a senior management position, let alone a CEO position. He asked, "When do you need an answer, sir?" "About 5 minutes ago. If you say yes, and I hope you do, you will fly to Tbilisi tomorrow morning." "Okay, I'll do it. I have a few people to say goodbye to, but I'll be careful not to go into too much detail about the mission. One more thing, because this must stay within these walls, all the extra money, can you pay me later as a bonus? I'm in the process of divorcing my wife, and I don't think she deserves a reward for, among other things, cheating on me. It also makes sense not to announce my arrival to the people there. Consider it done. Let's shake hands." Peter and the CEO shook hands, and Peter went home to pack his things. The first thing he did was call his children to tell them he was leaving for work and didn't know when he would be back. Miranda told him about family events. After 2 uncles were convicted, Uncle Kevin packed his things and disappeared without saying a word to anyone, only after emptying his savings account. Elizabeth and her mother were still struggling with the divorce. Half an hour later, they promised to exchange emails and keep Peter updated. Then he started packing his things. He finished quickly. The last part was the hardest. He called Meredith and suggested they have lunch together. As they settled into a restaurant booth, she said, You're going to tell me something, and I'm afraid I won't like it. Peter waited until their food was served and said, "Yes, you're right." Meredith immediately interrupted. "You found another woman and want to end our relationship." "No, I haven't found another woman. It's work-related. I can't tell you what kind of work it is or where I'm going, but I'll be gone for a long time." "Really? I don't like it. I love you, and I will miss you. I will wait for you, but what worries me most is this secrecy. Can't you tell me anything? In fact, telling you that I won't be around until further notice is already too much. So please don't tell anyone," said Peter. "There's one more thing that I need to discuss, and it is very difficult for me to say." "I'm listening," Meredith replied. "You just said that you would wait for me. I have no idea how long that will take. I cannot expect you to completely abstain from intimate relations. I know how much you love them. This is my request. If you meet a man you really like and see a future with him, don't hold back. Be happy. I will be the first to congratulate you both. But tell me honestly, just send me a Dear John letter, or in this case, a Dear Peter letter." Meredith had tears in her eyes when Peter made his request. He took her home to see Tobias for a moment, to tell him that he would be gone for a while. When he returned to his car, Meredith ran after him and hugged him tightly. "You know I love you, right? Please be careful. I don't like this secrecy at all. Whatever happens, I want to see you again." Peter replied, "I promise. I love you too. I guarantee in my heart I'll be back." The next day, he boarded a flight to Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam to connect to Tbilisi in Georgia. Once he was on board, he made himself comfortable and began working after takeoff. First, he took a quick look at the financial status of the project. As he began to delve deeper, he noticed that local workers were being paid in cash, but the money for payment was withdrawn in euros every week. This made him wonder why not in manet, the Azerbaijani currency, and why this wasn't noticed at the head office. A few hours later, when the plane had already begun to descend, another thought struck him. Peter made another note and put it aside for later. It was time to get out and get some rest. 6 hours later, he took off again. During this flight, he reviewed his initial planning and cost calculations. He then reviewed the business proposal for the project. 9 hours later, he cleared customs and was greeted by a man holding a sign with his name on it. After identifying himself, he received a set of car keys, documents, and a sealed box from this man. The man waved his hand at the parked Toyota Land Cruiser and left. Peter pressed the key fob, and the Land Cruiser blinked back. The car was not new and therefore inconspicuous, which suited Peter very well. Inside the car, he opened the box. Inside was a small antenna, a satellite internet router, a Chromebook, and a military GPS. There was an envelope at the bottom. Peter knew what was in it. Now it was time to travel to Azerbaijan. He opened the envelope and took out his credentials and documents, as well as a set of keys. Finally, he found maps and GPS coordinates. He entered the coordinates into the GPS and set off on the last leg of his journey. The first part of the trip went quite easily and quickly. After 150 miles, the GPS told him to get off the highway, and he did. The road quickly began to deteriorate, making driving much more difficult. Fortunately, his vehicle was up to the task, and after 5 grueling hours, he finally reached the vicinity of his target. Suddenly, he heard shots echoing in the mountains. He pressed the accelerator pedal, and the car jerked forward sharply. He continued driving like a man possessed. Finally, he reached his goal, a house half built into the side of a mountain, with a beautiful view of the surrounding area and the path leading to it. He got out of the car and leaned against the door to keep from falling. After finally getting there, he felt nauseous from the rush of adrenaline and struggled to hold down the contents of his stomach when he heard a woman's voice behind him, angrily shouting, "What are you doing here? Peter wanted to turn around, but she said, "Stay right there." The message was clear. He looked out of the corner of his eye and saw a beautiful woman pointing a Kalashnikov rifle at him. Peter couldn't stand it. He vomited, and everything in his stomach splashed out forcefully. When he finished, he turned around, not caring what would happen next, and carefully took out a letter of recommendation written in Azerbaijani from his pocket and threw it to the woman. Without lowering or putting away the rifle, she picked up the letter and began to read. Then she asked in good English, "Why didn't you tell me right away? Are you sick?" Peter began to come to his senses and sarcastically replied, "You didn't give me a chance, did you? And no, I'm not sick. This is my reaction to someone shooting at me and almost throwing me into a ravine, and then a woman points a machine gun at me, all within 2 hours." The woman's eyes widened. "Someone tried to kill you? Look at the roof of the car. And how should I know? So, you greet all the guests." The woman replied, "I'm Aliana. Looks like I'm your housekeeper." Peter looked at her carefully. She was around 30 years old, with almost black hair, light brown eyes, high cheekbones, and sensual lips. Her body was hidden under a wool sweater and wide trousers, but they could not conceal her large breasts and long legs. He said, "How convenient. A housekeeper who speaks almost fluent English. Couldn't you find a better job?" Aliana almost burst into tears as she replied, "No. Now, will you please come in so I can apologize for the reception?" Peter was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of very strong and sweet tea in front of him. Aliana sat opposite him, but before she could begin, Peter said, "Please don't apologize. There's no need. I'm actually glad you're being so careful. My reception in the area hasn't been particularly warm, hence my reaction after you pointed a gun at me. It was just too much." Aliana asked, "Do you have any idea why they tried to stop you from getting here?" Peter was hesitant, but he needed someone to trust, so he decided to test her a little. "It's obvious that you are a smart woman and speak English. So why are you my housekeeper when you could at least be a translator?" "I'm an accountant, and I'm studying English. When I applied for these positions, they had additional requirements." "What were the requirements?" Aliana blushed as she said, "I had to serve them intimately." "What? People working at Global Constructions?" Peter almost shouted. Aliana nodded, lowering her head. Peter was stunned and outraged. "I'll add that to my list." Aliana looked at Peter with a question in her eyes, and Peter made a decision. "I was sent here to find out why this project went wrong. During the flight, I discovered a few things that alarmed me. You're an accountant. Can I hire you as a personal accountant and possibly a translator without the knowledge of the current project manager? For everyone else, you remain my housekeeper. I'd really like that, but I need to be home by the time my daughter gets back. My parents are getting older, and it's hard to look after her. I understand. Maybe your husband can help sometimes." "I don't have a husband. Nobody wants me," she blurted out. Peter remained silent. They had only known each other for a few hours, but he was already fascinated by her. "What happened in the gorge?" asked Aliana. Peter, glad that the conversation had changed direction, began to explain and ended his story with the words, "No one should have known that I was here, but I'm afraid." Peter did not finish the sentence. He looked at his watch and asked, "Is there something to eat? Where can I sleep? I'm falling off my feet." Aliana busied herself preparing food in the kitchen while Peter took a shower. When he came downstairs, a simple but nutritious dinner was on the table. She was already getting dressed and preparing to go out. "I'm still your housekeeper, so leave the dishes for tomorrow. I'll wash them when I come back. Good night." Aliana walked for miles to the village, thinking about the situation. He seems like a good person. I could see that he was truly shocked when I told him about what they were trying to force me to do, and he had the decency not to ask questions when I told him that Petra and I lived together. I wonder if his offer to become my accountant is truly sincere. Meanwhile, Peter closed his bedroom door, took off everything, put on a t-shirt, and crawled under the duvet. He passed out almost instantly. The next morning, Peter looked out at the cold, deserted landscape. He made coffee to get rid of the remnants of sleep in his head. He had jet lag and didn't sleep well, even though he passed out immediately. Aliana promised to come at 8, and he wondered how she got here yesterday. He didn't see a parked car when he arrived. The door opened, and Aliana walked inside. Immediately, Peter asked, "How did you get here?" "I didn't hear a car. I walked. It's only 6 kilometers. That needs to change. I'll arrange transportation for you." "What kind of transportation would you like? Do you know a car that can be bought?" "That's part of the housekeeper duties. You need to go grocery shopping, don't you?" Peter said, winking. Aliana looked surprised. "A car? Seriously? That would solve a lot of my problems." "Yes, please. But you'll have to come with me. I don't know anything about cars." "That's fine. We'll arrange it. Now, have you thought about the offer to become my personal accountant and possible translator?" "I have a problem with this. My parents are too old to take care of Petra all day. They can look after her for a few hours, but not longer. I don't have anyone else to help. Bring her with you. Take her to school and pick her up afterward. Then bring her with you." "How old is she?" "I'll set up one of the rooms as a playroom and a bedroom for her. She's 10. "Are you really ready to do this?" "Of course. This is company policy. Daycare is provided if the employee needs it." "Now, will €1,000 per month be enough?" "What? So much?" "I would agree even if you paid me half, but people here get paid in euros, don't they? That's what's taken out of the bank account before they get paid." "No, people here are paid in minutes." Peter thought for a moment and said, "Okay. First, the car and the computer. Do you need a cell phone?" "That's all included in the job? Don't worry about the cost. If we have everything ready, let's start investigating. I want to understand why the accountant is withdrawing euros and paying in minutes. Now I have coffee ready. Would you like a cup?" A few weeks later, since Peter tried to remain as inconspicuous as possible, it took a while for the situation to begin to clarify. Workers' salaries were withdrawn in euros and paid in minutes. The problem was that if a worker received €500 a week, he was paid 500 minutes instead. Peter found this out when, with Aliana's help, he began interviewing the villagers. The exchange rate of the manet, which was about €1 for 2 minutes, meant that someone was pocketing half the salaries. Now Peter and Aliana needed proof that someone was taking half the money for themselves. They decided to involve Aliana's family in the case. Her father, although an old man, had great authority among the villagers and knew who could be trusted and who could not. They then turned their attention to foreign workers. To his surprise, Peter found a photo of his former brother-in-law, Kevin Rhodes, on the staff list. He was hired under a different name through an international recruitment agency. It was he who managed the workers' wages every week. Peter decided that he needed to be especially careful, otherwise his past with Kevin could play a cruel joke on him. Peter spent 4 months in Azerbaijan still trying to figure out who, and more importantly, how someone was pocketing the paychecks. He also tried to understand how Kevin Rhodes managed to get a job under a false name and with false documents. This proved difficult as the information was stored in a local database and was not accessible to him. Relations with Aliana improved steadily. Now Petra could come to the house with her mother. Aliana stayed longer, and they spent a lot of time just talking. Peter accepted Petra into his heart. Her bright, dark eyes and happy personality simply melted his heart. He also began teaching her mathematics and physics. One afternoon, they took a break, and Peter's phone reported that his private account inbox was full. He had forgotten to check it and hadn't opened it for about a month. He connected his phone to his laptop and started downloading incoming emails while continuing his conversation with Aliana. Aliana was happy. The introvert had finally opened up a little. Her feelings for this man went far beyond simple sympathy. He was funny, smart, reliable, as well as handsome and in excellent physical shape. He ran every day to the village and back and also exercised regularly. Suddenly she looked up and saw Peter looking at her. She asked, "What?" Peter replied softly, "You're daydreaming. I asked why you're alone with Petra. You don't have to answer. It's none of my business. But I want to understand why a beautiful woman like you doesn't have a man in her life." This was the question Aliana had been dreading. She was afraid that the answer might alienate the only man she was interested in. A man who didn't try to get her into bed, treated her as an equal, and had also become attached to her daughter. But he was honest and open now. She needed to make up her mind. She had to take the risk. If he found out from others, she could lose everything she had. And perhaps he could get her another job if his mission here ended and he returned home. Aliana took a deep breath and began quietly. "Nobody wants me anymore. I'm 30 years old. I'm too old to be a wife for local men. I was supposed to marry my uncle's younger brother. He is the husband of my mother's sister. But before the wedding, the man forced himself on me. That's when I got pregnant with Petra. Of course, it was my fault and no man wanted me anymore. I was damaged goods. My parents sent me to study in the hope that I could get a job at GC. You know what this led to?" she said with a trembling, sad voice. Peter looked at the woman he had fallen in love with an hour after they met. He stood up, spread his arms, and said softly, "Come here." Surprised by his request but unable to resist, she stood up and walked into his arms. Peter hugged her and whispered in her ear, "I'm really sorry to hear this from someone I care about. I hope what I say now doesn't create a rift in our friendship, but it's very important. I have fallen in love with you, deeply. I promise that I will get you and Petra out of this situation, one way or another." Aliana was shocked. Peter did not reject her. On the contrary, he came to her aid. She quietly began to cry and whispered, "But I'm damaged goods. For me? No. It was done against your will, and that's completely different. It doesn't make you any less beautiful in my eyes." They stood there hugging for a long time until Peter said softly, "I need to check my email," and kissed her tenderly on the forehead. With a light heart, Aliana took Petra back to the village, and Peter began checking his letters. There was a lot of junk mail which he immediately deleted, leaving about a dozen letters. The first was from Meredith. "Dear Peter, yes, this is a Dear John letter. We promised to be honest with each other. And no matter how hard it is for me, I must keep my promise. I met a man, and he turned my world upside down. Like you, he's very good with Tobias. We are going to get married in a few months. When you return, I hope I can introduce you to Frank. I know you told me that I should live my life while you were away, but we had something good, even though we knew we weren't compatible as a couple in the long run. Meanwhile, I've been promoted to Chief of Security, and with that comes some very nice perks. More importantly, I now know why and where you were sent. If you need information, don't be shy, but only use this address. With love, Meredith." He felt a twinge of nostalgia but was very happy for Meredith. He answered, "Dear and beloved Meredith, what great news! You made my day. I sincerely hope that you two or three will be very happy together for the rest of your lives. Of course, I will come to meet your husband, but this is unlikely to happen in the near future. There's a lot of work here and it will take time. I'll write about my successes soon. With love, Peter. P.S. Please hug Tobias for me. There were 2 letters from Victoria and 1 from Elizabeth, both asking him to stop the divorce and talk. Peter simply deleted them without responding. There were letters from his children, most of them from Miranda. She missed him very much and kept him updated on family matters. She wrote that everyone blamed each other for the current situation, especially since 2 uncles were now in prison and Aunt Elizabeth was fired for not warning the company about the impending attack on him. One of the last letters had a rather large PDF attached, and it was from his lawyer. He downloaded the PDFs and started reading them, then leaned back in his chair as tears welled up in his eyes. The divorce was finalized, and he was single again. Peter began sorting through the documents. The lawyer had done a good job. Since Victoria had a good job with a high salary, the alimony was reasonable and only for 5 years. She received the house and a significant portion of their savings. The lawyer wrote that the judge required counseling at the outset, but because Peter was overseas and it was not clear how long he would be there, counseling was ruled out. There was one final document with the title, "Please read to the end. I implore you." Peter opened it. It was a letter from Victoria, handwritten and scanned into a PDF file. He took a deep breath and thought, why can't she just take no for an answer? He began to read. Dear Peter, at the moment, I am sure that you immediately delete all my letters without reading them, and I cannot blame you for that. You must hate me with all your soul, and I understand that. The divorce papers delivered as a gift deeply hurt me and forced me to take a hard look at myself. To top it all off, Miranda and Elizabeth also made me realize that what I did was wrong, and Miranda forced me to see a psychologist. The last 3 months of counseling have been brutal, but it has finally opened my eyes. Dear and beloved Peter, I am so sorry and so terribly ashamed of the way I have treated you over the last 10 years that I cannot even put it into words. I regret every joke I played on you, and I can't even begin to imagine what you had to endure because of me. Having said this, I now understand that there is no turning back and that reconciliation is out of the question for you. When I finally realized that the sight of me with Kevin had destroyed the last vestiges of love you had for me, I decided to sign the divorce papers. The only thing I ask you to believe is that I did not cheat on you. He never even touched me. My counselor and I came to the conclusion that I was suffering from a strange kind of self-destruction. I destroy what I love most to destroy myself. It sounds strange, but this is the only explanation we could find. I still love you with all my heart. When you get back from where you are, can we please talk, for old time's sake? I sincerely hope that I haven't done you so much harm that you can no longer trust any woman. I hope you find happiness in the future with someone you can love without fear of what she will do to you. I will keep you in my heart forever. With love, Victoria. Peter said out loud. There may be some hope for her, but it doesn't involve me. He decided to give himself a little farewell celebration and pour himself a strong drink. Then he sat for a long time, looking out the window at the harsh landscape. The next morning, Aliana came and found a gloomy Peter. She was immediately afraid that he had changed his mind about what he had promised yesterday. She quietly opened her laptop and began working, checking the bank accounts the company used. An hour later, Peter came out of the kitchen with a cup of coffee. He placed the cup in front of her but still looked gloomy and lost in thought. She took a deep breath and asked, Something is bothering you. I can see it. Is it because of what happened between us yesterday? Peter looked at Aliana in shock and stammered, No, this has nothing to do with you. I received disturbing news yesterday. Oh God, I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do to help? No. Actually, it was good news. My divorce took place, But there was a letter from my now ex-wife, and that's what worries me. Does she want to come back to you? Yes, but she knows that won't happen. I'll never go back to her again. Can I ask why you divorced her? Peter nodded and told her about how his wife and in-laws had treated him, the prank that had been the last straw, and the betrayal of his sister-in-law for not warning him about what her brothers were planning. He also spoke about the subsequent divorce, which his ex-wife tried to contest. With growing surprise and later anger, Aliana listened to Peter's story. When she heard that Peter's nemesis worked here at Global Constructions as a cashier, and that he was most likely the one defrauding her compatriots, she decided to redouble her efforts to bring him to justice. When she told Peter this, he gently advised her to take a back seat. Peter explained, "I received another letter. It was from a dear friend. She wrote to me that, among other things, she was going to get married. She also wrote that she was promoted to GC Security Chief, so she now knows about my mission here. I can trust her as much as I trust you, so I'm going to ask her for resources that are unknown to the GC staff here. I suspect someone at the head office is also involved." Aliana asked in surprise, "Do you trust me? You barely know me." Peter smiled and said, "With my life. Why? The simple. No mother in her right mind planning to betray her employer would expose her daughter to him the way you did. Besides, I suspect that the feelings I have for you are mutual, at least a little." Aliana looked long and carefully at the man in front of her. Finally, she dared to ask, "And what feelings do you have for me?" Immediately she blushed and looked down at her feet in embarrassment. Peter took her hands and said quietly, "Aliana, I love you. I intend to marry you as soon as this mess is settled and I get permission from your father. That is, if you want to marry me, of course." The room was silent except for the ticking of the clock. "Will you marry me?" Aliana didn't understand the question at first. When she realized that Peter had proposed to her, her knees buckled. She pressed herself close to him, and when she felt the man she had fallen in love with put his arm around her, she replied, "Yes. I never thought that I would become someone's wife, but with all my heart, yes." At that very moment, she doubted. She stammered, "But you kept your distance this entire time. We didn't even kiss, and you asked me to marry you. I don't understand." "Aliana, I will avoid everything that could compromise you. If you say we can't kiss before marriage, so be it. I won't say I like the idea, but your people have different standards and values, and I just have to respect them." Aliana pressed herself against his chest and muttered, "You are a wonderful person, but we don't have to wait until my father gives permission, and I'm absolutely sure that he won't get in your way." That same day, Peter began writing a letter to Meredith using a satellite connection. He explained what he suspected was going on and that help was coming from headquarters. He outlined everything he had found so far and made a list of the necessary equipment and someone unknown to the GC staff who could keep an eye on the suspects. Having finished, he thought, now we wait. Late in the evening, he went to the Global Constructions office. This was one of those places he had avoided until the last moment, until it became absolutely necessary. He needed to know the layout of the building. When he arrived, he noticed another discrepancy. GC had hired a local security company to provide 24-hour surveillance, including a guard. However, there was no guard, and in the 2 hours that Peter waited and watched the building, there were no guards in sight. Long after midnight, he decided to take a chance. He took out the keys he had received along with the access permit. After carefully checking to make sure there were no cameras or other security systems pointed at the building, he tried the keys. The second key opened the door. Relieved, Peter took the flashlight and went to inspect the building. He searched and found the office of his nemesis, Kevin Rhodes, who was the manager here. Peter looked around the room. Next to this office was a room with a counter and a back door leading to the backyard. This was the room where workers received their salaries. There was a laptop on the desk in Rhodes's office. It wasn't turned off or even locked. Peter carefully examined the contents of the hard drive and found the local database. It appeared that Rhodes was doing double bookkeeping and was also embezzling significant company funds. Peter discovered that the laptop was connected to the GC corporate internet. Still as lazy as before. Very nice to know, Peter thought, and immediately saw an opportunity. Next time, he would bring a flash drive and copy the database. An hour later, he finished. He left through the back door after checking to see if there were any cameras. Finally, at 4 a.m., he wrote another email to Meredith, asking if it was possible and legal to clone the laptop in Kevin's office, and if it was possible, he wanted it done. It would also eliminate the need for him to make additional late-night office visits since he wouldn't have to copy the database. He had one personal question. What should I do to take Aliana and Petra home with me? He wrote that he wanted to marry her and included a copy of Aliana's birth certificate and other documents she had given him. 2 weeks later, the answer came in the form of an address, an airway bill for digital cargo, and 2 sets of numbers. He checked the document and realized that he needed a bigger car. A minivan would do. Peter asked Aliana to rent a car in a nearby town to avoid attracting attention in the village. The next morning, he set off very early. The trip went smoothly. He picked up the mini container from the deserted warehouse and loaded it into the van. The container was heavy and locked. At his home, with the help of Aliana, he pulled the container out of the van and brought it into the house. Late that evening, he returned the van to the rental shop, and his very tired head hit the pillow just after midnight. The next day, Peter drank coffee. He had been in Azerbaijan for 6 months already, and the investigation began to bear fruit. He was waiting for Aliana so they could unpack the container. When she arrived, the numbers were needed to open the locks. The container opened like an old toolbox. The top drawers were used for cameras, and one of them was filled with tools for mounting them. Downstairs were 2 laptops, one with a satellite receiver connected, many documents, a flash drive, another receiver, and a sealed envelope addressed to Peter marked, personally. There was also a Glock pistol complete with a permit. They got to work. The laptop with the receiver was a clone of the one Rhodes used, and the receiver was to update it. The second laptop was intended to record the results of the keylogger and for encrypted communication through the GC internet. There was a message on the flash drive. "My dear Peter and dear Aliana," the message said, "I'm so happy you two found each other. The envelope for Peter contains all the necessary visa documents for Aliana and Petra when you get married. Aliana, it was very helpful that you already speak English well and have received a good education. We have already notified the consulate. Now to the point. As long as the laptop in Rhodes's possession is officially the property of GC, there is no legal objection, especially since it is also connected to and using GC's corporate internet. This allowed us to clone it and install a keylogger. Do not use the cloned laptop for anything other than browsing. Whatever you do will be reflected in the original. I arranged for a person to follow Rhodes. This person will not reveal himself until the investigation yields results. He has great power in Azerbaijan. That's why we were able to provide you with weapons. When I explained your suspicions, they immediately agreed to the job. Please be careful. Rhodes does have an accomplice at headquarters. We know who it is and will take action as soon as you can prove Rhodes is fraudulent. Please be careful. Rhodes is dangerous. He may have been the one who organized the shooting in the landslide when you arrived. We still don't know why he didn't continue this business, perhaps because of Aliana's uncle, who does not want to rock the boat in his territory. Love, Meredith. A week later, on Sunday just after midnight, Peter began the most dangerous part of this job. He arrived at the GC offices and entered through the back door. This time, he was very glad that there was no security company. Over the course of a week, he had carefully studied the daily routine and found that the security company was neglecting its duties after working hours. Their last round was always well before 6 p.m. He also made sure there were no cameras or other security measures. Peter sat quietly at Kevin Rhodes's desk, wondering where he could install cameras so that nothing going on in this office would go unnoticed and where he could hide the transmitter. He made decisions and started working. It took 3 nights to complete the installation of 6 cameras, 4 in Rhodes's office and 2 in the room where salaries were paid. When he tested the system, he noticed that he could read everything displayed on the laptop and see exactly what was happening on the table where money was counted and put into envelopes for workers. On the 3rd night, early in the morning, as usual, Peter was carefully removing all traces of his work when he heard the key turn in the front door lock. With lightning speed, he removed the last traces and turned off the flashlight. Quietly, he walked out the back door and disappeared into the darkness. With a sinking heart, he got into his rental car that was parked too close. Failure. You've become too careless. Luckily, you're done now. We will wait and see what the cameras show. After 8 o'clock in the morning, Peter returned the car to the rental agency and walked a few miles to his car when he noticed someone following him. A person whose gender was difficult to determine, dressed in loose clothing, slowly hobbling several dozen feet behind him. Peter walked past his car and out into a small square. There, he noticed a small store with a few tables outside for customers to have breakfast. He sat down at one of the tables and ordered coffee and a simit. He loved this round bagel with sesame seeds. As he sipped his coffee, his stalker took a seat next to him and, in a woman's voice, said, "Meredith says hi to you." Pleased, Peter just nodded before the woman continued. "You did well in the office, but it was very risky. Don't worry. No one noticed it except me, and I only noticed it because I was checking that particular door." "Thank you," Peter said. "Meredith didn't say you were a woman. Great move. I take it you're not here to give me a report. Should we meet somewhere? Or can you come to my house?" The woman looked at Peter and said, "Do you trust me right away just because I said hi from Meredith? There are 3 people in Azerbaijan who know about my connection with Meredith. It's me, my future wife, and you. Rhodes knows about my past but was removed from the case before I met Meredith. Yes, I think I can trust you. What is your name? I can give you a name, but it will be false. I work for the government of Azerbaijan, and that's why I'm involved. One more thing, no offense, but I checked on your housekeeper and her family. Everything is clean except for her distant relative, a non-blood uncle. He and Rhodes are related. I'm not sure what his purpose is. Be careful with this person. He's dangerous." Peter absorbed the information and stored it for future use. He replied, "Can you come in the evening? I need to rest a little first." That evening, the woman was sitting in Peter's office. Aliana was in the village with her parents and Petra. The Azerbaijani official had found much more information. She told Peter that Rhodes used 2 banks in addition to the one that served Global Constructions. He withdrew money to pay salaries from the GC bank. Then he went to another bank where he exchanged half of the money from euros to minats. Finally, he deposited the balance into a 3rd bank account in his name. The last bank is foreign and we cannot reach it. However, I found out the account number. Maybe you can do something about it. She gave him the journal, the camera footage, and a notarized transcript of what was said, along with an English translation. Peter thanked her warmly, and she left. The woman promised to keep an eye on Rhodes one last time and to stay in touch if anything new came up. With a light heart, Peter began to intervene in the day-to-day affairs of the project. He wanted to start getting the project in order, so he asked the CEO to announce that very soon someone would be appointed to find out why the project was going so badly. Peter's plan was twofold. He wanted to force Rhodes to make mistakes and start managing the project. Payday was Saturday. The woman last followed Kevin Rhodes on Friday when he went to the bank to get money for the payout. Once again, she captured everything on camera. On Sunday morning, Peter, Aliana, and the same woman watched the video footage from the surveillance cameras in the office. They saw Rhodes and a hooded Azerbaijani putting money into envelopes. The images were high quality, and they could see exactly how much money was put into each envelope. The Azerbaijani stood up and looked straight into the camera for a moment, and Aliana gasped. "This is my distant relative, not a blood uncle. He's in on it too." The woman said, "Great, then we'll squeeze him too. This guy is the leader of a local gang, but we couldn't prove it." She looked at Peter as she handed him the phone number and asked, "Is our agreement still valid?" "Of course," Peter replied. "I'll pull him out, and you'll grab him at the airport." Peter didn't mention the other laptop and keylogger in front of the woman. It wasn't even needed to copy the local database. Thanks to this, he had other plans for that laptop. To say that Kevin Rhodes was extremely angry would be an understatement. The appointment of an overseer meant that he had to take risks he was not willing to take. Last Friday, he also had to pay off the imputed Azerbaijani for his services and intimidating the workers. He now walked into his office after a long and stressful weekend. On Monday morning at 5 o'clock, Peter sat in the same office, quietly chuckling at Kevin's stupidity for not even turning off his laptop. He didn't even have to enter a password. Peter got to work. He went to the bank that Rhodes used to store the stolen money and transferred everything back to the GC account. When he was done, he changed the bank account password, removed the laptop cloning software and the keylogger, then took the documents out of his briefcase along with the gun and waited. When Kevin saw Peter sitting in his chair at his desk, looking at his laptop, he screamed, "What the hell are you doing here?" Kevin felt relieved. If Peter was the overseer, he could handle him. After all, he'd already ruined his life, hadn't he? Peter chuckled and said, "I've been here for a while and have come to some very disturbing conclusions about what's going on here. And you're at the center of it." "Like what?" Kevin grinned. "Fraud and extortion," Peter began. "For starters, I will find out very soon who is involved in this. I will also be in charge of day-to-day affairs from now on. So you now report to me. This is my purpose. I'm not going to work under you, imbecile. No way. I'd rather quit." Peter had a hard time keeping a straight face. This conversation was developing exactly as he had planned. "It's possible. How long does it take you to make a decision?" Rhodes growled. "Not at all. I'll quit right now. I will print up the application, sign it, and leave." Peter took out the documents he had prepared in advance and said, "No need. I expected this, so here is a statement for you." Rhodes realized he had been outplayed but signed anyway, not knowing that everything was being recorded. He straightened up and grabbed the laptop. Peter responded, "This is company property. It stays here." Rhodes smirked, "Then sue me," and he quickly disappeared behind the door. Peter took out his phone, dialed the number the woman had given him, and said, "He's gone." He quit and stole the laptop. "I need 3 days to formalize his dismissal. After that, it is at your disposal. Tomorrow, I will report the theft to the police." With this matter over, he introduced himself and Aliana to the staff. Aliana was assigned to the position of project accountant to check the documents. Peter instructed the HR department to find out who was working on the project and for how long and to enter the data into a spreadsheet. He gave instructions on how to calculate how much Global Constructions owed each employee if they were paid half as much. With this matter settled, he asked the translator to go with him. He made the man swear to remain silent about what was about to happen. Half an hour later, Peter and his translator were invited to the house of Aliana's parents. After introductions, coffee, and pleasantries, Aliana's father asked about Peter's plans for the future. Peter did not hesitate to tell the old man, "When this project is completed, I want to return home with my fiancée and her daughter, whom I intend to adopt, of course, after you give me permission to marry your daughter." Aliana's mother screamed with joy. The man smiled, and tears sparkled in the corners of his eyes. He asked, "Do you love her? And do you think you can make her happy?" Peter said seriously, "I love Aliana very much, and Petra has also won my heart. Please, sir, I formally seek your blessing to marry your daughter. You get it, son? We have already noticed that our daughter is happier than she has been in recent years. In fact, since then." The man fell silent. Peter said softly, "Aliana told me, I promise he will pay dearly for this. I have already given him retribution." At mid-morning, Peter returned to the office. The table was ready, and Peter looked at the total. It was approximately equal to the amount he had transferred from Kevin's account. He went to the bank and ordered cash to be ready for the next morning. He spent the rest of the day interviewing employees and trying to convince them that he was not like Kevin Rhodes. Taking into account the 10-hour time difference, Peter called his CEO that evening. "My mission is coming to an end. I need to complete some finishing touches. People here have suffered greatly due to GC. I want to give them some relief other than paying back wages. I saw the geological report, and we can drill a fresh well for them, but I need your approval for the expenses." The answer was immediate. "Do it. It's not just about money. The company's reputation is also very important to me. Do you have any idea when you'll be back?" "Not really. We must compensate people for the money they lost. Rhodes doesn't know it yet, but I hacked his bank account and returned the stolen money to the GC account. I want to return money to people personally. I need time to get the project in order again. I'm going to get married here and take my wife and her daughter with me. Finally, there's a well that needs to be drilled, and I want it done right, so I'll manage that too." After finishing that call, he called Meredith. "This is Meredith Green speaking. Good morning." "Good morning, Mrs. Green. This is Van Ryan speaking. I wonder if you could give me a few minutes of your time." "Mr. Ryan, I'm so sorry. I think you have the wrong number. This is the 45th internal number. Please dial again." "Thank you." Meredith replied and hung up. Peter looked at his phone in surprise. He realized it was awkward and that Meredith didn't want to say his name. He couldn't think of anything better to do than wait. 45 minutes later, he received an answer. His phone rang, and when he answered, the display showed an unknown number. But the warm voice was undeniably Meredith's. "You've caused a commotion in the main office, Peter. My God, what a mess. But I'm so glad to hear your voice again. You found your person, I take it. We have found our woman head of accounting. She cheated on big projects for years. Together with the FBI, we searched her office and home. She was still in my office when you called. I didn't dare say your name because we didn't know if she had other accomplices. Now she is in a cell and helping the authorities with their investigation. Your work and information have been invaluable. So good to hear your voice again. How could I help? Are you coming home soon? I think in 3 months, but I need a personal favor from you. I have no home. Normally this isn't a problem, but I'm coming back as a married man with a 10-year-old daughter. Is it possible to do something about this? Meredith laughed cheerfully. Frank is a property manager. It won't be difficult for him. What are your wishes? They talked for a while. Then Meredith called Frank for a conference call. Frank said he had a good idea of what to look for. Peter told Frank that he didn't have a set budget, but a bonus was expected, so Frank shouldn't be too frugal. His lawyer, through Meredith, obtained all the relevant documents regarding the divorce. Now it was time for Peter to take the next step in his relationship with Aliana. He made an appointment at the embassy and planned a trip to Baku for himself. It had been a long day. Peter felt tired but still excited. The sun had already set, and the night was crystal clear. He put on a down jacket, took out a telescope to look at the moon in the night sky, poured himself a drink, and went out onto the balcony to admire the stars. An attempt was made on Peter's life, but he managed to hide. Some time later, his phone rang. Peter answered wearily. Yes. He heard a familiar voice. Peter, can you open the door? Peter quietly went upstairs, looked out the window, and saw that an Azerbaijani official was standing in front of the door. He quickly went downstairs, carefully opened the door, and took a few steps back, holding the Glock pointed at the door. The woman came inside and said, "We have already caught them. These people did not expect you to fight back." Great job. Peter relaxed a little but immediately began to shake and feel nauseous as the adrenaline wore off. He collapsed to the floor, allowing the woman to take control of the situation. Half an hour later, Aliana's car came to a stop a few feet from the front door. A few seconds later, the dark-haired woman quickly entered the house, pushing away the other woman and man, and took her employer and possible future husband under her protection. Aliana angrily asked the woman, "Did you use him as bait? Just another expendable foreigner because it looks good on your resume?" The woman was stunned by Aliana's rage and answered truthfully, No. I think it was that other foreigner and his accomplice from the bank." On Friday night, Kevin was furious. He hired 2 men to take out that damn Peter Van Ryan, but they failed miserably. Now he had to hide, waiting for a private plane on the runway near Baku. The plane was supposed to take him to Russia, where he could launder his money from a secret account and disappear. Someone tapped him on the shoulder. He looked back and saw a woman. There was a car parked a few dozen feet away, and 3 men next to her were all holding rifles. "Kevin Rhodes, you are under arrest for solicitation of murder, theft, and extortion." Kevin panicked, but the rifles pointed at him prevented him from grabbing the woman and running away. He was put in a car and taken to the police station. There, he tried one last trick, hoping that headquarters wouldn't know he had resigned. On Monday morning, Peter received a call from HR saying that one of the employees needed help because he was in prison. Just by coincidence, Peter was in Baku to buy a ring and for a consultation at the embassy about Aliana and Petra. Therefore, he was the designated contact person. That afternoon, a grinning Peter sat across from Kevin, who was seething with rage. Peter laughed out loud. "What do you want from me? You're not going anywhere anytime soon, and I'm not going to help you. You must. I know for sure that someone from the head office will make your life very difficult if you don't do this." Peter laughed again. "You mean the head of accounting? She is helping the FBI with their investigation, so you're out of luck. Anything else?" Kevin's face, from crimson, turned pale. He shrugged and grinned. "Friend, at least my time here is well spent. When I get out, I will be able to live peacefully on everything I have saved." "You mean money stolen from the company and employees? I wish you good luck with this, but the joke will be on you." "What do you mean?" Peter didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, turned to the door, and knocked. When the door opened, he said, "Live well, but remember, he who laughs last, laughs best." At the same time, Peter walked away thinking, good riddance, leaving behind a confused Kevin Rhodes. Peter then went to a jeweler and, together with the jeweler, designed an engagement ring, 3 intertwined stripes of gold, white, pink, and yellow, set together with a pink diamond. The stripes symbolized 3 people who would live together. For Petra, he bought a white gold ring with a small ruby. The jeweler displayed boxes made from mammoth ivory. Peter bought 2 of them and ordered gold inlays. One box read, "Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" And the other, "Will you be my daughter?" The jeweler promised him that everything would be ready by tomorrow afternoon. Before Peter left, the last thing he organized was a wedding ceremony at the embassy for the next week. If necessary, a big wedding would take place in the village. Peter arrived late yesterday and was exhausted. He drank 1 glass, set the alarm, and allowed himself to fall into bed. The next moment, he woke up to the incessant beeping of his alarm clock. He quickly got up, shaved, took a shower, picked up his 2 beautifully packed boxes, and quickly drove to Aliana's parents' house, where she was staying while he was away. He arrived just in time, knocked on the door, and was answered by Aliana's father. Once inside, he found Aliana and Petra in the kitchen. Aliana threw herself into his arms and whispered, "I thought you left. You didn't say goodbye, and no one knew where you were. I will never leave you or Petra. Can we sit down?" Peter answered softly. Aliana's mother placed a cup of coffee with bread and honey in front of Peter, who thanked her gratefully. He looked into Aliana's eyes and spoke, "I bought you a gift, and another one for Petra." He handed the woman and girl the boxes. Aliana's parents wanted to leave, but Peter asked, "Please stay. You might want to witness this." Aliana unwrapped the package and examined the box until she noticed the inscription and read it. She went from red to white to red again. Her mother, looking over her shoulder, saw what was written there and began to cry. Aliana, with wet eyes, answered, "Yes, I will be your wife with all my body, soul, and heart because I love you." She opened the box, saw the ring, and was stunned. Her mother screamed, "Oh my God, how wonderful!" Petra also unwrapped her package and quickly deciphered what was written on her box. She just hugged Peter and said, "Yes, Daddy." Now it was Peter's turn to cry his eyes out. His future mother-in-law hugged him as if her life depended on it, while Aliana's father just shook his hand. Peter began to explain, "We need to get married at the embassy so I can adopt Petra. All documents are already in order. When we get back, we can celebrate here if you want." Aliana shook her head. "I only want to celebrate with you, Petra, and my parents. The others always treated me like trash. We're not going to throw a party for people who don't deserve it." After a busy week, Peter had a project that needed to get back on track, and Aliana received a letter from a woman in the Secret Service that they found her grandfather's will in the safe when they searched the house of their distant relative. The will stated that half of the land he said he inherited belonged to her parents, along with the water rights attached to it. Her mother was furious, and Aliana had to keep her away from her aunt. Finally, Peter opened the hotel door. They left their luggage and went to the embassy, where they said their vows in a small ceremony. They then completed the paperwork for Petra's adoption. Later, they played tourists in Baku and returned to the hotel after dinner. On the way back, Aliana became more silent and nervous. This did not go unnoticed by Peter, and as soon as they were in their room, he turned around and asked, "Something is bothering you. Please tell me." Aliana just stood there with her arms at her sides, her head down, and her eyes on the ground. She tried to say something, but her vocal cords refused to cooperate. Peter took her in his arms and whispered quietly, "Are you nervous?" "A little," she admitted. "It doesn't matter." Aliana shook her head, and the words finally came out. "I'm afraid. I've never been with a man except once. I'm afraid you will find me ugly and inadequate. No need for that. We will teach each other and learn from each other what we like and what we don't. You will never be inadequate, and I think you are beautiful. Now go and take a bath to relax. Would you like a drink for courage?" Aliana shuddered and replied, "Don't drink. I'll take a quick shower and get into bed so you can shower too." They made love. Returning to the village, they were met by Aliana's parents and, of course, Petra, who rushed at Peter, calling him Dad. Peter and Aliana organized a dinner at the company office for family and employees. Peter set up a video conference with his children. They already knew about his wedding plans but had not yet met Aliana and her daughter due to the circumstances in which he had to operate. Now everything is behind us, and the project is back on track. Another month or two, and I'll be able to return home with my wife and daughter. The large television screen came to life. Peter connected it to his laptop and a small camera on the same tripod that had previously saved his life. Sitting in the middle of the sofa with Aliana and Petra on either side, he opened the channel. His children appeared on the screen, and Miranda immediately exclaimed, "Is this my new sister? Oh, Daddy, she's beautiful. I can't wait to hug her. Hi, Petra. I'm Miranda, and I'll take good care of you." Aliana translated all this to the girl, who blushed and smiled shyly. Peter interrupted before Miranda could take over the entire conversation. "Miranda, boys, please allow me to introduce my wife, Aliana, and our soon-to-be daughter, and your sister, Petra." After the show, Peter could relax and enjoy himself. It seemed his kids and Aliana got along like wildfire and didn't forget Petra during the conversation. The hours passed quickly, and when Petra fell asleep next to Peter, he thought that was enough. They said goodbye and closed the connection. Aliana said emotionally, "You have wonderful children. They're almost like brothers and sisters to me in terms of age. Now I know how you stayed so young." 2.5 months later, Victoria sat at her desk at the reception desk at Global Construction's headquarters. She originally came to work as her sister's replacement. She wanted the job because Peter was missing, and the only lead she had was the GC company. After she applied for the job, she had an interview with the CEO, who made it clear why her sister lost her job. If he had even the slightest suspicion that something like this would happen to Peter again, she would have lost her job so quickly that her head would be spinning. Since her manager accepted a position abroad, Victoria was promoted. She had heard enough about her ex-husband to know that people held him in high esteem, and rumors of his whereabouts were spreading far and wide. She noticed a beautiful woman with short brown hair, long legs, and comfortable flat shoes looking at her intently. Victoria wondered why that woman was looking at her like that. Meredith, she thought, deciding to take the bull by the horns. Victoria approached her. "Good morning. I'm Meredith Green, head of security. I'd like to talk to you. Can we have some alone time?" Suddenly, Victoria became very anxious and could only stutter, "Yes. Now. Where?" "In my office, if you would be so kind to come with me," Meredith replied. Victoria, suddenly feeling very nervous, followed the woman. As they entered the small office, she noticed a photograph on the wall. It showed Peter holding a boy above his head, both smiling at each other. Victoria stared at the photo until Meredith cleared her throat. "Yes, this photo is very dear to me. When you and Peter divorced, we had an affair. We also realized that we were too different to stay together forever. I am now married to another man, whom I love very much, but your husband taught me that not all men are users. When he left, we had a good talk, and it was emotional for me. He literally set me free and told me to seek my happiness. But that's not what I wanted to talk about." Victoria was stunned. This woman's frankness and honesty frightened her greatly. Timidly, she asked, "What do you want from me?" "Peter divorced me for good reason. Now I understand it," Meredith replied. "Peter is coming back very soon. On my advice, he quashed the restraining order, but only for you, mind you. The rest remain in effect. And now the most important thing in our conversation, you work here, and you will see him and his wife a lot because she also works at GC. If I notice anything wrong with both of them, you will go the same way as your sister." Victoria was shocked by these revelations. This was the first time Peter was mentioned in connection with a wife other than herself. Besides, she never could have dreamed that Peter would find a woman so soon after the incident that started it all. She stammered, "I understood your message and will take your warning to heart. Rest assured, I don't want to hurt Peter. If I weren't so stupid, I would still be married to him. I have always loved him, but I forgot that I also needed to respect him, and I allowed my brother-in-law and brothers to influence me. I still love him and want him to be happy, even without me. I don't deserve him anymore." Meredith looked closely at Peter's ex-wife. She thought for a moment that perhaps she could help find a home for the family. Meredith took a deep breath and said, "You must have an idea of Peter's taste. My husband is trying to find a home for him and his family. Would you like to help us? We both still love him? If I remember correctly, do you still love him, and are you married to another man?" I don't understand this," Victoria replied. "Yes, you do. I love him like a very dear friend or like a brother. You and Peter have a common history and 3 wonderful children. You will be seeing Peter, and if you are careful and patient, you will become his friend too. If you help us find a house, I will definitely mention it to him. This will be a beginning. I'll help." The next week, an email announcement was sent to all employees. On Monday, there will be a company party on Friday next week to welcome Pete Van Ryan back to head office. On Tuesday, Peter, Aliana, and Petra arrived after a long journey. Aliana was a little pale. She was feeling sick, and it wasn't just air sickness. She was sure that her pregnancy began the night after their wedding. Peter's children, Meredith, Frank, and the CEO came to greet the family. Meredith, who had seen Aliana through numerous video conferences, thought she looked absolutely radiant, even more beautiful than before, especially now that she was pregnant with Peter's child. Yes, both women had become very close in a short period of time. Miranda and her brothers prepared a stuffed sloth toy for Petra. While the adults talked animatedly to each other, they took Petra under their wing, and after a few minutes, they overcame her shyness, and she was laughing out loud. The CEO told Peter to take a week to set up camp, as he called it. After this, the transfer of COO responsibilities to Peter would begin. 10 days later, on Friday afternoon, the CEO said into the microphone, "Ladies and gentlemen," and gradually it became quiet. All eyes turned to the stage. The CEO looked at the waiting faces. Everyone knew that an important announcement would be made. Rumors had been circulating for a week, most of them bad and related to a merger with a competitor. Last year, global construction was in dire straits due to a failed project. The CEO continued without further delay. "I will say this. I am getting older and slower. The project in Azerbaijan showed me that I no longer had the energy and intuition needed to run a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Note that the project in Azerbaijan is now successful, and GC is back in good shape. Rumors about the sale of the company are wrong. However, I am stepping down as CEO." He stopped, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I sent a man into a dangerous business to save this project and thereby the company. He had to go through a lot to uncover and prove the fraud that almost cost us the project. This man has now returned. He not only saved the company but also found love. He is the one who will lead the company in the coming years, I hope. I am proud to introduce you to Mr. P. Van Ryan." There was a short pause, and suddenly the hall exploded with applause. Victoria clapped happily along with everyone. Peter walked onto the stage, and silence returned. He began, "I am Pete Van Ryan. Many of you knew me before I disappeared. For the rest, I will take the time to get to know you. My job is twofold: to keep the company healthy and the employees in a good mood. The first starts with honesty. The CEO was exaggerating. I saved the Azerbaijani project, but I didn't do it alone. I was assisted by Mrs. Green, who from the main office supplied me with the information and organized the tools necessary to prove the fraud. And finally, I was helped by the one whom I can now call my wife, Aliana van Ryan. Both women walked up to the stage and Victoria gasped. She already knew this from Meredith, but Peter's wife was absolutely amazing. Her posture was proud and straight, with long, dark, shiny hair, high cheekbones, broad shoulders, and large breasts. She had a slightly rounded belly and long legs. She was beautifully dressed in a dress that complemented her skin tone, making her literally glow. Suddenly, Victoria was overcome with realization. This woman was pregnant. This was not surprising. Peter loved children. Victoria experienced many emotions. In the end, she felt regret. She realized that her colleague from the reception was talking to her. "Sorry, I didn't understand," she said. "I said he seems like a nice guy. I hope he keeps his promises." Victoria smiled proudly before replying, "Oh, he will. I know for sure that he is a wonderful person." "How do you know this?" "I was married to him for 23 years, Victoria said in a slightly sad voice. "And you are divorced, I assume? If he's as wonderful as you say, why did you divorce?" Victoria responded with tears in her eyes. "It's a long story. In short, it was my fault. I made too many jokes. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.